What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Heath Mullican, joined by Nick McDaniel. Nick, it is good to see you for another week of podcast greatness.
Man, what you been up to, man? I know you've been kind of running like crazy. I've been trying to hit these shows and hit a couple, so it's always fun to get out to see the indie wrestling scene and, of course, get together with you on a Sunday/Monday, whatever day of the week we can make it happen and kind of break it down a little bit.
Yeah, so my summer is slowing down, so hoping to start getting out to some more shows. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Fans, if you want to know where we've been and where we're going and our thoughts on all of that along the way, you go to patreon.com/tappedoutpod, become a member today. You get all the shows early, you get the national show early, you get this show early, but then we're uploading other content behind the scenes. You can also become a member at YouTube, and you can watch all the videos. Hey, if you are watching on YouTube, you got to subscribe. You got to hit that like button, and you got to hit that bell to get your notifications. And we're also wherever you can find your audio podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all the places, all the things. So no matter how you listen to your entertainment, we'll be right there for you. So thanks for your support. I continue to be blown away. Was talking to a friend and was just trying to say, oh yeah, we get this many views a week. And I was like, wait, we get this many views a week. And so just so humbled and so grateful for all of the fans' support. So before we get to the Indy Rewind, I did not get to any independent shows over the weekend, but I did get to go to AEW Dynamite on Wednesday with my girlfriend and her 13-year-old son. And dude, he'd never been to wrestling before. And it was a really incredible experience. You and I have talked over the last couple of weeks of just taking new people to wrestling shows. And I think he's hooked. I think he's hooked on this.
It doesn't that seem to be the case a lot of times, like especially when it's a young person. And look, and when I say young, I mean I'm talking 25 or under. I mean, for that matter, wrestling is I always say this, and this is kind of the obstacle. If they go into it with an open mind, I always think you're hard pressed to, like, there's not something they didn't enjoy about it. If
Right.
if they go in there going, oh, I'm not going to like it or whatever, okay, yeah, they're probably not going to. But if they're just at least open to the concept and like, hey, I'm going to see if there's anything in there between the physical, ability, the drama of it, the acting, the part of it, like all of those type of things, I think there's something for everybody to the point you can get hooked pretty easy if you just start wrestling it with an open mind.
Yeah. So just a few brief thoughts. Number one, and I don't even know. Will Ospreay is one of my favorite wrestlers. I know he's not for everybody. He's one of my favorites. For a $20 ticket, I got to see Will Ospreay wrestle in a match against Lance Archer, which, if you're not a Will Ospreay fan, you might have liked this match because this wasn't a typical Will Ospreay match. I got to see Brian Danielson cut a promo. Got to see MJF cut a promo, and the biggest pop of the night from my friend, from Cam and her son, were when Darby Allin pinned Hangman Page in the main event, and it was a real quick, super quick pinning combination, and it just caught everybody off guard, and they popped, and that for them was the biggest pop of the night. I did ask, Cammy's been to different shows with me, and I said, what do you see the difference between this show and other shows? And she was just like, this is just so much faster. Like this is just a different, and that would be like any professional sport, a professional NFL game. You compare that speed to high school, or you compare that even to college. It's just a much, much faster thing. I will say about halfway through the collision, the Rampage tape, and we hit a wall, and it was kind of weird. And then I messaged you and Myron. Smackdown is coming to Greenville October 11th. I checked those tickets. Our tickets for this show, $20 each. the exact same tickets for SmackDown, $100 each. Absolutely crazy, but it was a fun night and money well spent on my part. So I had a great time.
Hold on before you get started. I want to
Yeah.
segue because I think this is the opportunity to discuss something that we've been talking about here for a few weeks. So two things. One, obviously, if you look, you're thinking, hey, what about SummerSlam? Catch the show later this week. Myron and I are going to discuss SummerSlam in depth, I'm sure. But one of the things we kind of had conversations about is the gap, the once a week format for national scene was kind of it spreads it pretty thin. Like we're always talking about how like when Myron and I discuss AEW, like we record before Dynamite airs. So we're talking literally about a week ago's episode, but the show, our episode drops on Thursday afterwards. So we're like a complete week off. And so we were like, hey, how do we fix some of that? And, look, obviously you like AEW, you're, the national product. You watch SummerSlam this weekend.
Yes.
So kind of what we discussed is, and this is kind of going to be we're going to start this next week, folks, before you kind of get curious. We're going to break the shows up a little bit. Like this show still primarily will be, it's the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. But, 10, 5, 15, randomly insert a number there. We're going to discuss a little bit of the national at the beginning, just things that stood out to me and you that were like, hey, we just want to go ahead and cover them. And we don't want it to be a full week. And we're going to still recap all the shows that happened and everything going forward. But then Myron and I will promote the shows that are going to come up the following weekend. But we're still going to it's going to be the reverse. It'll be a bulk of it'll be national with a little bit of the indie. So it's kind of just a way to mix it up a little bit. But and I know you're talking about Patreon and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to reason like last week was a pretty heavy reason as to why you would probably want to be a Patreon member. Look, the Shane McMahon news broke. So I got a phone call. Somebody gave me, look, again, it's a source. The Source brothers were out. I jumped on. I recorded a video. It's still behind the paywall. I'm not putting that out on the public, but all of our people knew what I was told was the meeting was for, etc. That's why you want to be a member. Plus, also, by the way, Myron and I put our predictions for SummerSlam behind, it's up behind the paywall. I think I did 100%. I got to go back and listen to it, but I think I hit 100%.
Oh, wow.
I think so. I might have missed a detail, but I think I hit 100% as far as the winners go. But we kind of want to stress like that's kind of why. And I think, by the way, the compacting the national scene, I think we're going to do more deeper dive stuff behind, on Patreon, like on specific topics and things like that. So that's kind of why you want to become a member as well. I think we're going to do focusing more indie as much as possible, and we'll kind of see from there. So
one of the cool things we were texting while I was at Dynamite, and you were texting me about the Shane McMahon stuff. And then the next day, Thursday, everybody's making a big deal. Well, Meltzer just broke this story, and you had patrons messaging you saying, well, wait a minute. Didn't you just break this before? You broke this last night. So I just want to be very clear. I don't mean to toot your own horn, but toot. This is a national story. And if you'd have been a patron of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network, you would have got this first before anyone else in the country.
Yeah. And it's one of those, like, look, sometimes, and I always tell everybody, by the way, sometimes sources are not correct.
Right.
But that's also a reason why it was behind the paywall. And it wasn't because, like, if you were wrong, you didn't want to. No, I literally was like, hey, this is what I'm being told. I'm not, I haven't had a chance, obviously, to verify it 100%. But I wanted to get it out there because Bully Ray kind of tweeted that he was going to talk about it. So right. I was like, hey, I want to just put this out behind the paywall and let people know, hey, if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm the first to go, hey, my source was incorrect. It wasn't correct. And that's also why I didn't put it out. I didn't put it out publicly because if it wasn't 100% correct, then right. It was like, hey, I'm saying this is true. Like, I didn't say that. I'm saying this is what I'm being told. Anyway. But yeah, so to join patreon.com/tappedOutPod, you'll get that kind of stuff. And even more so down in the future, there's probably going to be more deeper dives even on national stuff because we're going to, the national stuff, we're still going to cover it, but it's probably going to be less, as far as the deep dive part of it. And look, some of it will be public on Patreon, some of whatever, but we just like some of it will be behind the paywall as well. So anyway, let's get to what we're really here to talk about. And that, of course, is the indie wrestling, right?
Yeah, let's jump right into the Indy Rewind and look at the shows from this past weekend. SCA ran Friday in Royston, and that was to set up this upcoming Friday show, Ultra Violent Radiation. We'll get to more to that in making the drives. Also, Saturday night down in Tifton, Georgia, Kraken Pro Wrestling, their biggest show to date, between 150 and 200. It is, they are starting to gain some traction down there, which is really good to see. This is the only show really in that region, and so I'm glad that these wrestling fans down here are getting some independent wrestling, and it's very clear that they're going with some young talent. Here's what I like about it. And if you don't know, and I don't think we're spilling the beans. Sam Skaggs, aka Homa Beer Hansen, he and Huck are kind of running this thing, and it is an avenue for mentoring. They're mentoring a lot of these young guys. They're putting a lot of their booking ideas out there. You can check them out on YouTube. They've got a great YouTube channel. If you are looking to sponsor independent wrestling, this is a great opportunity. You get your business out there in front of a lot of eyes. But it's cool to see what Kraken's doing down there.
Yeah, and like I said, because it's from the sponsorship angle, like there's a lot of businesses down in South Georgia, Middle Georgia, that area, who like, yeah, you could sponsor some stuff up in this area, but it's kind of like, okay, well, what about businesses down in South Georgia or Middle Georgia? There's your opportunity. Plus, by the way, they're doing some really good stuff for the communities. We've always talked about that. Sam, he's been on the local news there a few times now, getting the word out there. So if you're a sponsor, you're going to be like in that environment where they're at least getting out there as well. And you brought up Huck. And like I said, this is not a negative. I'm saying what you said.
Yeah.
Giving guys opportunities and, and stuff. But the mentoring job that Huck's doing down there, creating a product where, again, this isn't a negative on the talent, so don't take it that way. But Huck's taking literally, and he's making the sum is greater than the parts. Mm-hmm. He's putting a show together, and he's like, hey, and he's trying to put the chess pieces on the board and making the show really good. And, in an environment where like he understands, like I've got some green guys, let me set them up to be successful, not vice versa. And I think that's, where having Huck in that experience in the locker room is paying off for them. And, that's just, that's my take. But I kudos to Huck for the job he's doing down there.
It's very similar to a football coach that maybe has had a running game, and now their roster is geared toward a more of a passing game. So you gear your game plan toward the talent that you have, mm-hmm. rather than just this is what we're doing no matter what. They're really gearing their matches, their angles toward who they're working with. So, and they're giving these young guys with their YouTube channel. It is their YouTube channel. What I like about their shows is it's not just a hard cam, one shot, the match. They're interspersing promos in there. So they're giving these young guys opportunities to cut promos as well.
And it's short and digestible.
Yes.
They're taking their show that instead, and look, everybody's got their own format, and I totally get it. But they're not dumping 2.5, 3 hours on YouTube and say watching. They're like, hey, here's 45 minutes to an hour. Here's 45 minutes to an hour. Here's 40, stretching it out and making it like a weekly show, and kind of. So I think that's pretty cool. And like I said, and by the way, like I said, the format of the show itself is pretty unique, and I think that it's entertaining from that standpoint. And that, by the way, was from a non-wrestling fan who I had watch it say, oh, okay. And they enjoyed the fact, by the way, that it was, I think that episode was like 47 minutes or something like that.
Right. And there were a couple of their episodes that were maybe 20, 25 minutes. So very good. So make sure you check out Kraken Pro Wrestling. Southern Fried Championship Wrestling was in Monroe, Georgia, down there at the Boys and Girls Club community court. I can't remember the number. I'll get that. Everybody else can quote that address like it's nothing.
405 Community Court. Boom.
Nagicism challenged Billy Buck for the Classics title. They went to a time limit draw, but it was clear from your eyes and being there that this is certainly not a settled issue with these two.
No, I mean, we did the draw. We did 5 more minutes, and it was a draw. They were like, hey, 5 more minutes. And Nacho was like, you're not getting 5 more minutes. But they're coming back August 17th. And I think a lot of this show was very much geared to, hey, we're storytelling. We're setting, again, like you said, coming off of, a shindig. They've already had one, but now they're setting the pieces again to kind of head to the next big thing. Which, by the way, the August 17th show is shaping up to be a pretty important show. So, and I think that's probably where we get phase 2 of, Naja versus Billy Buck for the Classics title.
You had Deity with her first defense of that women's title, defeating the former champion Crystal Rose. Happy Madness and Teo defeated the Approved. Really cool to hear about Money Mason Andrews getting some opportunities to ring announce at every Southern Fried show.
He looks like $1 million. They put him in like he's dressing the part every show. He's he's in his suit. He gets in there, and it always astounds me. And I know everybody's like, oh, really? Yeah, it does that a young man of his age, the moment doesn't scare him. Like,
right.
He just gets in there and he just and he nails it. So kudos to the kid for, by the way, he had his little merch table set up over there on the side. He was selling some merch and stuff. So it's always good to see Mason, and the family. But yeah, the moment is not too big for him. He jumps in there and he announces and, crushes it. So kudos to the kid for, chasing that dream for sure.
And they have set up, and the Approved are finally going to defend those tag team titles on August the 17th. So that'll be, again, that show is shaping up to be big. Jacob Ashworth got his hands on Neil Koloff after Koloff had attacked him at the last show. That match ended in a disqualification and drew a lot of heat from the crowd.
Yeah, your classic. We went at it to the brawl. Koloff disqualified. Jacob Ashworth picks up the win, but of course we have the massive brawl afterwards with the pull apart and just the chaos that ensued. Like it's one of those, like after the match, you're like, okay, this is far from over. And by the way, massive heat. Look, it's as old school as they come. The dastardly Russian, coming in and attacking, the good old boy, from the local talent, and it's just like, hey, the fans are 1,000% behind Jacob Ashworth, and nothing says good old Southern wrestling more than a USA chant, at the heel Russian, character. So,
Todd, I know you're a multi-time Booker of the Year, but if this doesn't end in either a flag match or a Russian chain match, then you're leaving money on the.
Yeah,
that's
what are
right.
we doing?
That's right. Xavier Reyes defeated Rob Adonis, and Reyes has challenged Hunter James. These guys have been going back and forth for months to a no ropes match, a no ropes fight coming up. So that is one you want to put on your calendar. And then Zach Buchanan, I think he's wrestled maybe once or twice there at Southern Fried, but had an impressive win over former Classics champion Will Caution.
Yeah, Zach Buchanan is one of these guys. He's super young. He's super young in the business. We said this about his brother, and we are going to wash, rinse, repeat. When Zach Buchanan's on a poster, go watch him sooner than later. Because here's the thing. NXT's mindsets even changed from the days of when they were bringing in the Ben Buchanans of the world.
Mm.
They want young, gifted athletes, and we will mold them in our vision. Like, we don't want them necessarily, and look, no disrespect to the indie talents, right? But they're like, we don't want them necessarily to even have bad indie habits. We'll take this young, and this is going to happen sooner than later. That's what and I had an opportunity to speak to Bull, and I said, sooner than later, he'll be gone, because they're going to just look at him and go, he looks the part, He's a naturally gifted athlete. We're going to sign him. We're going to bring him in, and we'll teach him everything we need him to know, and that's all that matters. So if you want to see Zach Buchanan, go pay, whether it's Southern Fried, Southern Honor, especially Bullpen Pro down in Bowdon, Georgia, pay to go see him, because this is one of those guys that I'm telling you, sooner than later, you're going to see him on TV.
Yeah, this is the guy who gets drafted in Major League Baseball and is in Single A for like 2 weeks, and then that's it. So buy a ticket and see him while you can in Georgia, because it is gonna happen. Turnbuckle was at Callie and Tito's there in Athens, and I'm just looking at these matches that happened. Won't go over all of them, but as I'm looking at this, Nick, these are matches. I don't see a lot of repeats here, as far as not just Turnbuckle, but these are not matches you're seeing in Georgia. You had Vari Morales defeating Trevor Blackwell. You had 6-man action with some young talent. You had Tyson Maddox.
Hold on. Yeah. I'm going to hit the brakes on this one.
Okay.
Jamison Ryan.
Yes.
Getting on social media. How about, look, physique like none other, super talented, super charismatic, all those things. He's a great wrestler. But I don't mean to say this, but when you get on there and you you're gonna do something that's gonna impress, like you're calling us out essentially on social media about, making sure we all those things.
Yeah.
How about you win? You didn't win. I mean, we can be impressed with how great you are over there, but start picking up some W's. I know he does, and he's on Ring of Honor and all that stuff. But you might want, because here's the thing. He's probably going to blame his partner because he didn't lose. I'm going to clarify that. He did not take a pin. So
that's right.
In his defense, he did not get pinned. So Jamison Ryan, pick up some W's, and we'll talk about you even more.
And Nick just wrote your next promo for you that technically you're not getting beat. So there you go. And that was that you sent me that promo, and it made me, if I could have gone, I would have gone. Like that, kudos, because you cut a promo that sold me on going to a show. I wasn't able to, but yeah.
And I felt like I'd already locked in. I'd already committed to Southern Fried. Obviously, I enjoyed the show, but I wanted to. There was a part of me. There's a part of me that thought about double shotting. Like I was in my head I put it into the point. I put it into my app to figure out could I make it from one to the other? And I was like, it was 40 minutes between the two shows, so I was like, listen, kudos to them. Turnbuckle usually it's 2 hours. They're done. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, what do? I either got to miss the main, or I mean? Like I would have missed half of their show if I'd have left. So that couldn't pull it off. But look, all kidding aside, I guess. Yes, Jamison Ryan is a stud. I mean, he looks like $1 million. But yeah, pick up some W's, man.
Hey, Nick said that, not me. You had Luke Sampson defeating Moses, who's starting to get some traction here in Georgia. Ryan Rembrandt getting a win. Robin Renegade. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm looking at these are matches. These are talents you're not going to see anywhere else. And that's what we say week after week after week about Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. It is not your typical Georgia show. So get out. They're everywhere. They're running lots of shows. So get out and see them.
Yeah.
Sunday, I think it was Sunday, Action Wrestling was at their first show at Doss Barbecue. Their first one got rained out. The only match that had been announced, we're still waiting on results, was one called Manders was taking on the aforementioned Moses for the Action title. I'm assuming Manders won. I haven't heard about Moses getting a title win. Here's a question I want to ask for you, because when we looked at the poster for this Action show at Doss Barbecue, it wasn't the typical Action roster. My question to you is, if you're Action wrestling, do you use what I would call these secondary shows. I mean, this show wasn't live streamed to our knowledge on IWTV. Do you use this kind of as not necessarily developmental, but do you use those shows as a proving ground show? Like, hey, we're going to put you on this show, and if you impress us, then you can come wrestle in Tyrone for us.
1,000%. I think, by the way, and it's a solid format, right? It's because then you're getting guys who are essentially proving themselves before they're making, and I'm not doing this sarcastically, but they're getting their IWTV debut at Action, type situation. Like, go over here, prove yourself, and then we're going to move you in, because the Action shows in Tyrone they're streamed, like they're on IWTV. There's no, so it's like, go over here, prove your worth, and then we can move you in. And by the way, they do this. It's not the only show they run. Like, they're going to run other. It's not just those two. So I think it's a very solid format, and then I think it's a great opportunity for Matt Griffin and that team at Action to do just what you said. So,
yeah, you just made a good point. This is something that I hadn't really thought about. The Action shows are live streamed. That's a different animal. I mean, lots of shows in Georgia, like we've mentioned, are on YouTube, IWTV. But if you are live streaming your show, if you're Action Wrestling, that means you've got to have people that understand fully the hard cam. You've got to have people who are not going to be botch fest on there. And if you're going to have that, then you got to have an avenue for people to prove themselves that they can wrestle under the pressure of a live stream in front of a national audience. Action Wrestling is a national show. People around the country, important people, are watching their shows. So just something to think about. And Action continues to give folks great opportunities. So again, it was not one of the busiest weekends, but it was an enjoyable weekend, and some of those shows I'll be catching them on video soon. So now this upcoming weekend, a big weekend. So let's jump into making the drives. Phoenix Wrestling returns to the Savannah River Brewing Company this Thursday night down there in Augusta, Georgia. There is going to be Cowboy James Hunter, who's behind Phoenix Wrestling Experience, has said there's going to be a huge announcement. So we're waiting to hear what that is. Again, they continue to draw consistently. Sometimes, most of the time their shows are on Thursday nights. So that's a pretty big deal. I'll jump ahead in the notes a little bit. Well, no, that's Thursday night. Let's go to Friday. Friday night, I mentioned before, SCA. This is kind of like one of their feature events of the year, Ultraviolet Radiation. This is kind of like their PLE. And let me also announce, SCA just this week is on HTC in Hartwell. So they're on TV. You will see there's multiple promotions in North Carolina that put on their posters. This is a TV taping. I have no idea what TV they're on. SCA is actually on TV, actually on local television. This is a loaded card, the Squared Circle Action Championship, a cowbell on a pole match, Tower taking on Chris Nelms, Scott Mason, who's got that power square. He's putting that contract on the line against Pat Roach. The Friday night championship is on the line in a ladder match. Luca Daniels, Stevie Ray Frost, Chop Top, Kyle Phillips, and James Boulevard. Tag team titles on the line. They're starting a best of 5 series with Christian Taylors and Luke Da Silva. This looks to be a loaded card, Nick. And you and I both watched parts of that first episode, and it looked really good. Their first episode on television.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to say that kudos to them. SCA kind of saying, like, all these promotions that talk about, their TV tapings or their whatever, but then saying, like, this ain't that hard, guys. This is 2024. Like, the camera quality, like, it's not as, and I think some people are so busy making all of the excuses of why they can't do it to maybe it's time to like, guys, this ain't that hard. It's really not.
I really appreciated. All right, how do I say this? I want to be. I mean, no disrespect. A a lot of independent wrestling venues are not the most beautiful places in the world. I can say that. The way that they lit this show, the way that they lit the ring is great. It is very well lit, very easy to see. They do not use, to my knowledge, they don't use the light pole setup. So there's not an angle where there's a light
Right.
blinding you. I think down there in the Royston Dome, they have a light setup that is on the ceiling. Very well lit show. Camera quality very good. Not just the camera quality, but the camera work was really good. And as someone who has done commentary, the commentary was what I really enjoyed. It wasn't. I've listened to commentary of some shows, and it's like, well, he's got him there in a headlock. You know, oh yeah, you know, it's like Billy Bob and you know Joe doing the commentary, and that this was not the case. And I like that SCA. They're just going for it, man. They're just going all in on some of this stuff.
Yep.
The big one Friday night that we are planning on being at is the Rumble Jack for Southern Honor in Canton, Georgia. They've already announced at least 40 people in the Rumble Jack. I'm trying to do the math on how long that match is going to be, but it's not just about the Rumble Jack. Gunnar Miller versus Judias for the Southern Honor title in the last man standing match. Nick, these guys have gone back and forth. If you were a betting man, who you laying the odds on this one?
This is up there. You remember? So recently, Judias, and CT Keys had a match, and it was like, man, you couldn't. I was hard pressed to put money against either one of them. That's the problem. It's not who you put your money for. It's because if you put it for somebody, it's against somebody else, and I think that's the challenge that you face here. I love Gunnar Miller. I love everything about him. Ring wise, person wise, all the above. My thing is right now, Judias is down one title.
Mm-hmm.
The willpower of that monster, I don't know that he's got it in him to within a month or so to lose both titles. That's my challenge. I think I don't know. It's one thing to pin, and that's it. It's one thing to pin Judias.
Right.
It's another thing to put him down for a 10 count. That's the obstacle. So as much as I'm not putting my money against Gunnar Miller, I think it's just right now, because here's the other thing. Even as gifted of an athlete as Gunnar Miller is, he wrestles Southern Honor. Judias is out there, at Bullpen. He's at Southern Fried. He's at Southern Honor. He's an NWA. I'm just going betting on somebody who's got, the reps coming in right now. That's the only reason. That's and I just can't see right now putting that monster down for 10. That's the problem.
I agree with everything you just said. To me, the thing that's working against Gunnar Miller is he's always kind of been like a lone wolf, whereas Judias has the end game behind him. So this is, you can call it a one-on-one match. This is not going to be a one-on-one match.
No.
And not that Judias needs the help. Let me be very clear about that. Certainly don't want him mad at me. But I think Gunnar Miller has got to overcome a lot of odds. And if he wins, and this is going to sound ridiculous what I'm about to say, because of the type of match, because of the end game, I'd say this is an upset if Gunnar Miller wins. Even though he's a former champion, I think it's good. Listen, slobber knocker. That's what we're going for. Then you have the flip side of that, the flip side of a slobber knocking Hall fight, last man standing, Hunter James versus Kyle Matthews for the Jake the Snake Legacy title. Kyle Matthews earning that shot, winning a multi-man match at the last show. This is going to be such a test of Hunter James to see if he can hang with literally isn't the Technical Wrestler Award named after Kyle Matthews?
Oh, yeah, 1,000% it is.
So to see, can Hunter James, we've seen Hunter James fight, we've seen him in different things, and in the span of a month, Hunter James, we just talked about, he's in a no ropes fight with Xavier Reyes, and in this one, he's got to wrestle one of the best technical wrestlers in Georgia history.
Here's the thing with, by the way, if you're one of these, hey, which match is going to steal the show? If you're into technical in-ring wrestling, by far this is going to be your favorite match. And look, it's not mine in the sense of we'll see when we watch the card, though, right? We'll get to the Rumble Jack in a minute, but it's not a technical wrestling match by any stretch. We've already talked about how that Southern Honor title match is just going to be just two guys beating the crap out of each other. That's what that match is going to be. So technical wrestling-wise, here's your show stealer, right? Here's the thing. I think this match could do that on a regular card with a bunch of other matches, regular matches in it. It would do the same. Kyle Matthews is hands down one of the absolute technical legends in Georgia. Mm-hmm. One of the absolute best wrestlers, to put on a pair of tights in Georgia, right? Oh, sorry. I was choking because I saw we were coming to this match, and I knew I was going to have to say something that was going to make me literally cough if I get through this sentence. The problem is right now, I think, is Hunter James's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just, this pain. It's killing me to say this. Hunter James is so good, and he's on such a roll right now. Yes, I think it's his title to keep. I think, we always talk about like measuring stick matches. He got this thing from Chip Day. Now he's going to try to make Kyle Matthews that next stepping stone. If I had to put money on it, I would say Hunter James is probably he's going to hold on to this title for a little while.
If you're Hunter James, are you hoping to use your run as Jake the Snake Legacy champion? And he's already racking up a pretty impressive resume. Are you hoping to use that to get to the next level? And when the dust clears from Judias and Gunnar Miller, when the dust clears from whoever wins the Rumble Jack, that if you're Hunter James, you're like, hey, I got next.
Yeah. And here's the problem with that. He would not be incorrect in saying that.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He would not be out of line at all.
I think look, I don't even know if he's in the Rumble Jack. Have we even considered that he's in the Rumble Jack? And what if he wins the Rumble Jack? Because then he's got a case for, hey, I won the Rumble Jack and I'm the Jake the Snake Legacy champion. I deserve a title shot.
Whew. I would have to say he is going to be in the Rumble Jack, because if he's in the building and there's 40 wrestlers in that match.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They got to have him in there.
Now, are we going to pick a Rumble Jack prediction?
I don't know. The thing that I am most excited about the Rumble Jack is Gary Lamb's already announced the first two entries are Zach Mosley and Pepper Bottom. And he says if they don't fight those first couple of minutes, he's going to fire them from Southern Honor Wrestling. So we're going to see something that we've not seen before, and that is the potential tension breakup of Exotic Youth. Now, a lot of times guys are able to fight and still be friends. But this is great how can you not like this as a wrestling fan? That didn't this happen did Axe and Smash start off the Royal Rumble one year? I can't remember.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though. The difference is, I think, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when they made the announcement at the last show. The problem is you have the conniving, the devious, exotic youth that you're talking about. And we talked about it. It could be as simple as, hey, if we're shooting each other off into the ropes, we're doing shoulder tackles, or we're, getting somebody in a headlock and locking them up for a couple. I mean, define they have to fight.
Right.
And I think the problem is, this is a rare moment. It's a rare moment where I say this. Gary Lamb thinks he got one over on Exotic Youth. Right. But I'm waiting to see the comeback to say, like, you thought you got us, but hey, watch what, so that's the trick. And I think that's why I'm eager. That's why you need to be at your seat at the beginning of the Rumble Jack to see what goes down. I've got a couple people that I think are, favorites. So it's kind of like, hey, depending on who's in there. The problem with the, Exotic Youth is they're 1-2, man. The odds of you going, when it was 30, it was tough enough. Now that you're putting it up to 40, look, I really don't like their odds, no matter how, talented. And look, they do have the advantage of there's two of them. If they work together after that, that's the problem. If you're 3 and you come in, it's 2-on-1. If they can get rid of that guy, then the next, 4, it's 2-on-1, and on and on and on and on. So I think that's where the challenge lies for everybody after that. And it kind of comes back to, I know Gary thinks he got one over on them, but if they play their cards right, they kind of have an advantage going beyond that. So that's kind of something that they got to consider. I'll give you one. I'll give you one person that I think it would be ironic, by the way, if Judas wins, if he wins the last man standing match, and CT Keys were to win the Rumble Jack, both in-game members. But hey, by the way, don't forget, CT Keys just took Judas's title in Southern Fried. What kind of dissension? You were talking about dissension and things. What does that create?
Right.
In that environment. So that's a whole other crazy thing.
It is anybody's match, anybody's game. I don't even know. I don't even know who to pick. I just know I'm going to be there, and pretty excited for that. I've had that on my calendar for a while. So head on out to Canton on Friday night. Also, one more show there on Friday night that we are aware of in Conyers, Georgia, Platinum Championship Wrestling, featuring Huck and the Butcher versus Diggs and Vanderbilt, and then ENT versus the East Side Ronin. So Platinum Championship Wrestling, again, you can also watch their videos. They're on IWTV. But they seem to be making a new home there in Conyers and just running consistently second and fourth Fridays. So make sure you check them out if you're in that area. Let's move on to Saturday, a full day on Saturday. Disruptor Wrestling returns to Tannery Row Ale House. Hunter James versus Zicky Dice. We've mentioned Hunter James' name quite a bit already in this show. You said it. This is it. It's like all the bookers in Georgia said, "Hey, let's build Hunter James up and just throw the gauntlet against him and give him opportunities to prove himself against all shapes and sizes." This is going to be an entertaining match.
But here's the thing: Zicky Dice got a lot of prove, and you want to burst onto the scene and create some instant heat. Beat Hunter James at this show, and everybody's put on notice, right? And I got he's looking to get hot. Let me put it through that. Zicky Dice is looking to get hot.
Yeah, Zicky Dice, definitely has some stuff to prove. Speaking of hot, these two guys, Curtis Coleman came out and attacked Rico Gonzalez. Curtis Coleman, who we thought was done, we thought was retired. He's challenging for that Disruptor Wrestling Eastern Seaboard title. That is going to be, they may not even lock up. They may just even start hitting each other before the bell rings.
Oh yeah.
And then in a match that two young men, I mean, I consider them young men who have done a lot in independent wrestling. Caleb Conley and CB Suave battling for the NRW Eastern States Championship. Two guys that can that very athletic, can wrestle the technical style. That's going to be a fun match to watch.
And how cool is it? This is kind of different time, different place, a different mentality that we're getting to see independent titles from other promotions defended on, let me go back in my calendar here. 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Novel concept at the time. We'll leave it at that. Having, multiple titles from other shows defending it on a show. Who would have thunk that would ever happen? And now it's kind of becoming a norm. Like this is happening. We see the Georgia Heritage title defended on shows, Anarchy titles being defended on, so it's kind of cool that it's becoming more of the norm. And, even though there's that little bit of that rivalry out there, that they're still working together a little bit. So how cool is that?
What does it say? I mean, you and I, huge fans of CB Suave. I mean, we've talked about him a lot. What does it say again about him that just a show or two ago, he lost that Party Animal Championship, but is right back in line for another title, like not missing a beat. Because that's the kind of talent he is. So if you're in the Buford, Georgia area, we always recommend Disruptor Wrestling at Tannery Row Ale House. It is a great experience. Viral Pro Wrestling returns to the Warren Road Community Center in Augusta, Georgia. So if you're in the Augusta area, you got a show Thursday and you got a show Saturday. This is Infection. This is their big anniversary show. Joe Hendry is the main attraction here at this show. They'll be doing a meet and greet with him. Joe Hendry, who has taken the nation by storm on NXT and TNA.
Did you hold on? I want to pause you. Did you see his tweet about how times have changed?
Yes, about the Performance Center.
He's a TNA talent who wrestles in NXT. He gets to train at the Performance Center, and he still gets to work indie dates. Man, have times changed in the last 2 years, for that matter.
Yeah, what is? Yeah.
And by the way, if you're a super fan, go to Viral. You get to see Joe Hendry, who's probably one of the hottest, talents, not on a like Raw SmackDown show. Like across the board, everywhere else, he's probably one of the hottest talents, in wrestling right now.
Has one of the hottest songs in the country.
World.
Yeah, in the world. Yeah. I'll just make a prediction. I don't know that you're going to get to see Joe Hendry on an independent show next year.
No.
What an opportunity, though, for Billy Brash getting the opportunity to wrestle Joe Hendry. That's going to be a good match. Billy Brash at multiple promotions always seems to be the guy. Hey, we're bringing in a big name talent. Who can we put him in there that'll be safe and effective and have a good match and tell a good story? Oh, Billy Brash. Yeah. 100%. This is I'll have a little more on Patreon about this card. Go ahead and throw that out there. So put some heat on myself to get this done. AJ Kazana from, I think I said that right, from NWA taking on Tyson Maddox. You got Lodi versus TJ Boss. John Schuyler versus Chad Skywalker, who's starting to get his name out there. The tag team titles on the line: Buff and Fluff versus Jackson Drake and Alexander Leb, the kids from NWA, who, to my knowledge, this is their first tag team match in Georgia.
I think it is.
This is a team that should be getting booked everywhere. Jackson actually wrestled at the AEW show the other night, and then wrestles a lot in North Carolina, but I'd love to see them more. The main event's going to be John Davis defending that viral pro heavyweight title against Nick Halen. Circle that one. This is about as close to I don't know that I'd call it a dream match, but that is that's what wrestling's about. That is going to be a great match. Outbreak titles on the line. Drew Hood taking on his front office cohort, Rayhan and Tias. That'll be interesting. And then earlier, late last week, there was an announcement that Reka Tahaka, due to signing with the NWA, had to relinquish the Viral Pro Wrestling Women's title, which she had just won from Ellie. Ellie won the tournament. Reka won it from Ellie. And so Savannah Evans will be taking on Erica Demia, with the winner becoming the new Viral champion. Is this we've talked about women's championships in Georgia, but when you have a multi-show tournament to crown a champion, and then that champion loses the title, then that champion, like, you haven't had anyone have more than one successful title defense. Does it just show that there's a high turnover rate in women's wrestling in Georgia?
Yeah. We had a whole conversation about women's wrestling, and I don't know if that's a Patreon thing that we need to dive into as well. It's challenging. Let's say it. Let's say that as the least, right?
Yes, it's very challenging because there are a lot of good women's wrestlers, but it's there's only so many shows. So if they're all booking the same women, it's just hard to get them all. It's just hard to get that all regulated or whatever. Yeah. Georgia Premier Wrestling is going to be back in Jasper, Georgia. Some of the matches announced: Superstars defending or taking on Cousin Cletus and Corgan, and then you're going to have the first GPW Invitational Battle Royal, and GPW Heavyweight Champion, the Warden, is going to be defending that title. So lots of different stuff happening there for Georgia Premier Wrestling. Then Wrestlemerica returns to Forsyth, Georgia. This is one of their big shows, Greed or Glory. Very interesting match concept. Fry Daddy, who just won the Wrestlemerica title recently, is going to be wrestling Owen Knight. And if Owen Knight wins, he immediately gets a title shot. So Fry Daddy could essentially have to wrestle back-to-back matches, which, if Owen Knight defeats him the first time, that's got to make Owen Knight a favorite to win the title.
The challenge Owen Knight faces is that means he's got to beat Fry Daddy twice in one night to become the champion.
Right.
It's one thing to beat a guy once. To beat a guy twice, if this is an if Owen Knight wins this title, there's a whole conversation about where Owen Knight stands in the pecking order, because he's been the Classics champion for, it's what, a year?
It's been a while.
Yeah, so over a year. Now that I do the math, so yeah, I think this match is really, really important in the grand scheme of pecking order as far as champions and things go. If Owen Knight can snag this one too.
Absolutely. KJ Impala would be defending the Wrestlemerica Liberty Championship against Paul Wolf. Rose Gold taking on lovely Miss Larkin, who's making her Wrestlemerica debut. The tag titles on the line is Duncan Kong defending those against the Approved. Is the Approved trying to become tag champions in multiple promotions? So again, Wrestlemerica, one of those shows I haven't been able to get to yet, but make sure you check them out. They continue to do great things.
The venue's great. I talk about, because gyms are gyms, but when temperature control is the plus in buildings, I always say that. So kudos to those guys. I love the venue. And definitely, if that's your neck of the woods, definitely make sure you get out and see them for sure.
Yes. Speaking of tag team titles, Bullpen Pro is going to be back in Bowdon, Georgia, Saturday night, and they are having a tag title tournament. Here are the teams announced so far: AJ Black and Jaden Vane, Super Destroyer and Chris Kamikaze, Mr. B and Sean Nelson, Aaron Dallas and Frankie Valentine, J Rod and Zach Buchanan, and Lambo and Gemini. That is straight up for grabs. But one of those teams is, and Bullpen, a brand new promotion, starting to get some titles. And this is an interesting and great way to crown your first tag team champions.
Yeah, I had a good conversation with Bull Buchanan at Southern Fried this week when I was there. He was there watching his son. They have a match there, and we just had a great conversation about, hey, like, watching them come in, and that we always talk about it. I had this conversation with another promoter I won't discuss at the moment, but I was like, we were talking about numbers. I'm like, listen, don't get caught up in the actual number. What are your trends and what is your, how is it looking? Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's a better trend that you can see when you see 450, 505. Like, I mean, I looked at him and said, you're trending in a very good direction. And that's a good thing. And, even if they plateaued in that 400 or 500 range, I would probably take that any day of the week. And the venue, I had a fan. Here's the crazy part. Had a fan at a show tell me how good that venue is. Fans are putting your venue over. Like, yes. That's a plus. They're like, oh, it was worth the drive down there. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's the kind of feedback you want to hear. It was worth the ticket price to see all the talent that was on the show, and the venue was great. That's a good indie show.
Is it fair to say if you're IWE, Southern Honor, Southern Fried, even Action, the promotions that have been kind of like the top the last few years, is this a good time to re-examine maybe what you're doing? Because we've had multiple new promotions start this year who are killing it. I mean, Bullpen has come in and their crowds are killing it. And I would just say to all the aforementioned promotions, you cannot rest on your laurels in this day in Georgia. You have got to keep innovating. You've got to keep growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. Mm-hmm. And that's any business. So it's exciting as a fan to see new challengers step in, and really it just keeps raising the bar in Georgia, and that is good for everybody. So we just mentioned the tag team title. We want to take a moment. We like to do this every now and then, just to update you on who some of the champions are. And today I wanted to look at the tag team champions around Georgia. So we'll talk about these, and that some of these could change over the weekend. And then, like I said, we'll be adding Bullpen to this list as they add tag team champions. Southern Honor Wrestling, their tag team champions at the moment are the Grapplers. Be interested to see. We don't know if they're defending this Friday night. Don't know if Grappler 1 and Grappler 2 are going to be in the Rumble Jack. That would be very interesting to see. We've talked about the Grapplers a lot. They at one point, man, they were champions in multiple promotions. Mm-hmm. Do you think the second half of the year we'll see the Grapplers kind of get back to their championship winning ways?
I don't know. I'm kind of surprised they're not in the Bullpen. They debuted there at the last show, and they're not in the tag tournament. So we'll see. But I don't know. We always talk about it. There's two halves of the year. The problem is most people forget the first half of the year.
Right.
When they talk about everything, like all the accolades at the end of the year, it typically we have, short-term memories, and we only remember that last half. We saw that happen a couple years ago, right? Like we were like, what? And so I think that's the obstacle they face is they got to deliver in the second half, or that first half may have been for naught.
That's correct. Action Wrestling, their tag team champions are the Good Hand, Suge D and Kevin Ryan. Southern Fried champions, Nick Halen and Adrian Hawkins, that approved. Again, they're going to be defending those titles August 17th there in Monroe, Georgia. Wrestlemerica, just mentioned them, Duncan Kong, Duncan Mitchell, and Young Mighty Joe. Coastal Empire, new champions, just won these titles at their last show. Simon Sermon and Chip Schuyler. Viral Pro Wrestling, their current champions are the Buff and Fluff Connection. That's another team. I would love to start seeing them getting some tag title shots at some other promotions.
We're about to make a comment about a tag team next that I think in the future we're probably going to say about Buff and Fluff. Like in the future. That's kind of my take.
Yes, this next team, they are the Southern States Pro Tag Team Champions, the Anarchy Champions, the IWE Tag Team Champions, and the Premier All-Star Tag Team Champions. Joe Black and Murder One, they have multiple names as a team. But just when you thought Joe Black and Murder One would be slowing down, they seem to have taken 2024 by storm.
Are they the hot hand as far as tag teams go right now, capturing all this gold? Look, you can make the case, and you would be hard pressed to change my mind otherwise, that they're not the tag team right now in Georgia, sitting there with those titles. 4 titles. When we were saying that the Grapplers, they were 3 times, they were 3 promotions champions, etc. Okay, whether it's Joe Black and Murder One, whether it's the Dark City Violence Connection, whether it's the Hierarchy, whatever incarnation it is, this team is probably the team right now.
This would be my only knock on them. I would have to look. Anarchy's only run 2 shows this year, to my knowledge.
Yeah, but they won it at the first one.
Right, they won it at the first one, but we haven't seen a whole lot of defenses. Same thing with IWE. I would want to go back and look at the shows like.
I will push back on the Anarchy one because they defended against the Offside Heroes at the last show. They won them and they defended them. That's all you can ask, right? Like, hey, you brought it in and they defended and they beat a team, by the way, who was the champions at Southern Stage Pro. Like that, so.
Fair enough. I mean, they're a great team, and again, we got the second half of the year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then GCW, Georgia Championship Wrestling, their tag team champions are the Unrated. Again, if you're a promotion and we left your tag team champions off, please let us know. We'll add them to the list. Because we're not trying to leave everybody out. We're trying to cover everybody.
Well, the GPW, the Superstars, I think they're the tag team champions up there. That's, they were on my list. Sorry, I can't think of some flipped over on the other page or whatever. But yeah, and look, 2 young kids who are out there just knocking it out of the ballpark, right?
Yes, it's a great time to be a Georgia wrestling fan because you can see the veterans, you can see the young guys. Can we say? Is it safe to say? One of the knocks on Georgia has been that there's like 8 to 10 guys and they get booked everywhere and they're kind of the top guys. And then everybody else is just kind of, I don't feel that's the case anymore.
I don't know that you can anymore. The problem is there's so many. I mean, think about it. We just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm like, you can't. I mean, if you're running, there's shows that are 4. There's 6. There was one a couple weeks ago that was 7 shows on a Saturday. Same guys can't be booked everywhere. Like, it's just not, the math doesn't work. You can't double shot Buford to Bowdon. It's multiple. It can't happen. By the way, I also know there are a lot of promotions that are not big fans of double shots.
Yes.
What happens if it's traffic? What if there's a car? What if the other booker doesn't really care and he puts you on later and you don't make it? I mean, here's the thing. What I'm about to say is it's just a complete hypocritical statement to make. I'm all for the guys, making as much money as possible, et cetera, et cetera. But if I owned my own promotion, I'd never double shot anybody. Because I can't depend. 2 things. I don't want to be responsible for you getting to the other guy's show. And 2, I'm definitely not going to be at the mercy of another promoter getting you here for me to, because if you're like a guy that I think is first, second match, and so does he, who gets stuck, and I don't mean this as any disrespect to the talent, somebody's got to put you on late in the card because you can't be at the beginning of the card of both. Right. So, I'm not moving you to the main event spot. He's not going to move. So, I don't like being dependent. Here's my pushback from to defend the talent. I don't know. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, 19 years ago, 20 years ago, 21 years ago, 22 years ago, 23 years ago, 24 years ago, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, 27 years ago, 28 years ago, 29 years ago, 30 years ago, 31 years ago, 32 years ago, 33 years ago, 34 years ago, 35 years ago, 36 years ago, 37 years ago, 38 years ago, 39 years ago, 40 years ago, 41 years ago, 42 years ago, 43 years ago, 44 years ago, 45 years ago, 46 ye Pay them enough that they don't feel like they need to double shot.
Yes. Yeah. And I would on the flip side of that, if I've got you booked in the semi-main event and you're trying to double shot and you say, well, I need to be in the opening match, I don't want to, if I'm playing out my card, I don't want to have to plan my card out based on you double shotting. I want to plan my card out based on the stories I'm trying to tell, the flow of the card I'm trying to have.
What makes the most sense for my card? That's
Right.
all I care about.
Right.
Now, kudos, by the way, there are also promoters that go take the other show then.
Yes. Yes.
Like, it's just, I'm not, we'll figure it out. We'll put you on the next show or something like that. That's fine.
I have in private conversations, because the big thing people say is, well, you shouldn't say that this person can't work here, here, and here. I have often said, if I'm a promoter running in a town and there's other promotions in that town or nearby within 20 miles, I would pay you, hey, what's that other promotion going to pay you to work for them? I'm going to pay you. I'm going to make sure you get your money. But it's better for our show if you don't work that other show. But I don't want to cost you any money, so I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you more to be exclusive. I mean, I have preached that for a long time. Pay guys to be exclusive to your show.
That, or the reverse. I think we've had this conversation in the past. Hey, man, this other show's going to pay me this. So, and I always looked at somebody, and I know promotions that say this. Go get the money.
Yes.
Like, don't stand in their way. If they got an opportunity that you're not going to, don't throw a tantrum. Don't throw a fit. Figure it out. Hey, we'll work something out. We'll book something. We'll do it. Hey, you can get a promo. You can do whatever you got to do to make it where their person's not there. Right? I mean, it's that simple. You cut a promo on a Tuesday, video record it, have them attacked or something, they get injured, and they're not at the show. They'll be back at the next something. It's real simple, guys. It's not that complicated, but it's very, to me, it's wrong for somebody to come up to me and go, and I know this happened, so I'm not going to name names. Hey, I know we agreed on $100 or $200 for the show. This other promotions over here is offering me $350. My answer would be go get the $350 because that's those don't come often, and then look, I just go get it, and that's awesome. Congratulations, go get that payday.
Right. And again, if you're a wrestler in Georgia, you have to understand the number of people available to fill your spot is a lot more than it was a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you no-show, if you cancel, if you try to do the double shotting thing, you need to know you are replaceable.
Yeah.
And so that's something you got to take into consideration. So, fans, don't forget, we've already talked about on this show that some of the things we're going to be recording behind the paywall. Patreon.com/tappedoutpod is where you can hear our further analysis and deeper dives into certain topics. Don't forget YouTube, Tapped Out Pod, subscribe, like, hit the notifications. We continue to just be so grateful for all of your support, for your downloads, for your comments. Tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Hey, agree, disagree with some of the stuff we're saying. Maybe, listen, we haven't done a mailbag in a while. So if you've got some questions about independent wrestling, like we said, the format's going to be changing up a little bit next week. So we're excited for that. We're excited to get your feedback on that. So before we head out of here, Nick, any final thoughts?
AEW questions welcome. Anything that happens over the weekend, indie stuff, all of that stuff. Like you said, the mailbag episodes would be fun to dive into. And hopefully, look, if you've got hey, push, we don't want to say pushback. If you've got any feedback on the format, shuffle a little bit and things like that, let us know. Tappedoutpod@gmail.com, like you said. But I just think it's going to be a positive. It's going to open up us, I think, instead of the promotions part specifically, all of that making the drives, essentially, if we move that to the other show, it opens up to do Hot Hand, Power 5, more of the champions list, going over the breakdowns, things like that, gives up an opportunity to kind of take a deeper dive into some of those topics. So I think that's the plus part that we'll get out of it,
Yes, yes, I'm excited, and again, it's always fun to podcast with you, my brother, and it's gonna be awesome to hang out Friday night in Canton. Come see us. We're not animals. We won't bite you. Come and talk to us. We love chatting with our viewers. But for Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulligan, and thanks for listening to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. We'll see you at the matches.